And so we begin our next phase of the FNAF lore with Help Wanted, a VR game released in May of 2019. The game is revealed to be an in-universe game, and the Fazbear company has hired the Silver Parasols games developers to launch it. We get an intro from the company claiming that the FNAF game series were lies created by an indie developer and deny that any of these events have actually occurred. As we have noted in previous videos, I believe that the game developer is Animdude, who is also Michael Afton, and as we will see in this game, certain evidence does seem to support this.
Welcome to the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience. Fazbear Entertainment is excited to join the digital age, and what better way to do that than with an edge-of-your-seat virtual reality experience. We know that Fazbear Entertainment has developed something of a bad reputation over the last few decades, and while it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic, lawsuits pending. But we aren't above laughing at ourselves. Ha ha ha. That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios, lies that you've been fed over the last several years, into a hilarious VR game, in the hopes that we can finally move past these childish ghost stories and develop a new relationship with you, as well as your kids. Don't forget the merch, perfect for birthdays. So sit back and enjoy a few scares.
Notably, a waiver that plays at the end of this intro would reveal to us that real-world manifestations of characters and digital consciousness transfer can both occur, and indeed we will find that these are in some way important to the lore of the rest of this game.
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters, nightmares, night terrors, night sweats.
We see in-game that FNAF 1, 2 and 3 are all directly mentioned as games, and so it is possible that these three are the games created by the indie developer, which would place the creation of FNAF 3 as a game at the earliest shortly after the events of FNAF 3 occurred in 2017. Notably, within these game segments, we get a more era-accurate depiction of the control panel system, explaining away the tablet we have seen in previous games being too high-tech for the time period. The other levels all seem to have lower relevance, but the fact we don't get explicit name drops for the other games in the FNAF series implies it cannot be 100% stated that they exist in universe as games, although we can infer that the events that occur in them do. The Dark Rooms levels gives us Plush Trap, Nightmare Balloon Boy, Funtime Foxy and Plush Baby. As we know, the appearance of Nightmare Baby and Funtime Foxy here link back to Mike and his experiences across the franchise, both in Sister Location and his childhood, where it is believed he was in fact used as a test for the suits. It is possible that by this time Plush Trap is in fact marketed as the Plush Trap chaser toy seen in the Frights novels, explaining his appearance here, or conversely, this game may be what in fact leads to the chaser being created. The plush babies don't seem to call back to anything other than the fact that they may in fact reference Circus Baby's Pizza World based on their location. The vent repair games show us Mangle, who it appears just loves to crawl through the vents on sites, which may go in some way to help explaining where Mangle disappears to during the parts of the timeline where we have no clear actual location for the animatronic. The end of the game, however, reveals a second elevator exists within Circus Baby's rental that descends through a breaker room, ventilation and boiler room areas, showing the bunker is in fact several stories deep. We discover that it has been 0 days since the last incident on site. As Ennard also exists here, we know that he only formed on the last night of suffocation via the scooping of the suits and the inner mask in the hub being moved, meaning that these events depict the death of one of the two technicians that we see during that game. After beating the game on dark mode, we find Ennard does indeed enter the service elevator and presumably kills the player technician. The parts and service games may subtly hint at parts of the lore the company deems too dark to show outright, but are instead jokingly laughing about, as is the intention of this game. As we see, the Bonnie game's dark mode has black lights, which we also see in the main hub area for dark mode, which we know were used as part of the Twisted One illusions during the novel series. Chica's game shows the kitchen is infested with bugs and that chemicals are used in dangerous ways around food items, which are then eaten by the player. The Freddy game has us remove kids' items from Freddy's suit. Now, how these get in here seems questionable, as Freddy does not in fact actually have a throat to swallow them, so the fact that we remove them and place them into a refuse bin, which is claimed to be the lost and found bin, may imply this is in fact a very friendly way of the company portraying the events of them covering up the removal of the bodies from the original suits. In dark mode for Freddy, we also see the suit surrounded by several screens that appear similar to those that we see in the trailer for this game, which also appear to match the description of the control booth room seen in the Silver Eyes novels Freddy's site. The Foxy repair game only serves to show us that Foxy is indeed a very glitchy and twitchy animatronic, and the hard mode only reveals Foxy engulfed in flames, which does not appear to relate to anything as far as the lore seems to have so far. The Night Terrors segments would also appear to point to Mike and his experiences during the testing in his youth, as we see Funtime Freddy, the Puppet, Baby and Fredbear all present within the FNAF 4 bedroom or house. All these suits are known to have existed at the time when Mike was a child, and we can infer from the Fredbear instance that he may be recounting the events of his nightmares following FNAF 1. The fact that if you collect every single Faz coin within the game will reveal to you exotic butters as a prize seems to also confirm that this is indeed connected to Mike. Now, the fact that the original games are shown to exist in universe would go some way towards explaining certain design changes that have been seen throughout the series, as we see the games are stylized versions of these actual animatronic suits. Most notably, we see that Springtrap, as we see the Spring Bonnie suit featured in Into the Pit and also FNAF 6, is notably styled differently from the one that we see in FNAF 3, which we now know is in fact an actual game version of the character. It is also noted that the Fazbear's site used for the actual game hub appears to be the FNAF 1 site, but with the added difference of having the prize counter notably added between the two corridors in the main hall. As this does not appear to actually exist as far as we can tell in FNAF 1, this would also go further to explaining that, again, we cannot 100% rely on the specific details from these games in relation to the appearance of certain things. As the FNAF 1 site does appear to be the most recent site in the timeline, then it would make sense that this is in fact the one that was used for this game, despite the actual site, which had most of the events that are trying to be discredited occurred in, is not this site. Now, the true ending of this game would have the player being lured by the murderer of the 1985 killings and stuffed into a suit on stage as the killer dances on. However, there's hidden tapes across the game which reveal that this company is not the first that Fazbear's contacted to make the game, and even during this final credits rolling screen, the game also declares rather ominously that there is nothing more to see.
You might be wondering if you missed anything, or if there's anything left to see. So just take my word for it, you didn't miss anything, and there's nothing left to see. We're looking forward to a fresh start with you now that we've all had a good laugh at these tall tales, and now that you realize that Fazbear Entertainment is a safe, family-friendly brand with no skeletons in our closet. So goodbye for now, and we'll see you on the toy aisle. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Now, as we see in the game over screens, there's occasionally a message at times telling you to remember Jeremy. And the tapes that we find throughout the game would reveal his story.
Hello? Can you hear me? Don't exit this room, okay? This isn't a mistake. This room isn't a mistake. I had to hide these logs away from the core gameplay files in a place that only a beta tester would look, and in a place where the files could be protected. I just really, really hope that the next development team finds this before the game is released to the public. This game has some kind of malicious code in it that we haven't been able to fully contain or even understand for that matter. We're over budget and out of time. But that's not the reason that we're shutting down. Listen, I have to keep this short so the file size will be small enough to fly under the radar. There are more. They may not be in order.
These tapes are recorded by a colleague of Jeremy who is a beta tester for the game and who reveals to us that Fazbear Entertainment is indeed lying about the events and are using the game developer to cover up for their past.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer who supposedly made up a bunch of crazy stories that tarnished the brand. But that's not true at all. In their haste to develop this VR game and clear their name, they sent us some things I don't think they intended us to see, such as a hard drive containing emails between Fazbear Entertainment and a certain indie developer. Fazbear Entertainment hired the game developer. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up, a campaign to discredit everything.
While testing the game, Jeremy would begin to see a mysterious figure who began to haunt him, and none of the other colleagues at this point would actually believe him.
Jeremy complained of nightmares when he came in this morning. He wasn't talking about it like someone telling a friend about his dreams, though. He was pale. Looked like he hadn't eaten in days. He spent an hour talking in Dale's office, but it didn't look like he was giving much sympathy. When he came out, he went directly back to the testing room. He doesn't even jump anymore. Nothing scares him. He just stands there like he's talking to someone. Sometimes he rocks from side to side. We were told to leave him alone. I knew I was in line to do the testing next. They'd been prepping me for it. I guess they knew that Jeremy would need to be replaced soon. I heard a pretty heated conversation this morning between Dale, our manager, and someone else on the line. It really feels like this project is in trouble, in no small part because of the lawsuit, I'm sure. There has to be a lawsuit. There's no way there isn't. It happened in this building just a few doors down from me. I think it's made worse by the fact that Jeremy tried to tell us something was wrong. But as a dev team, we all just saw it as a challenge to find what the problem was and fix it. Who could have known that? I have to go.
So here we have evidence that some form of incident involving Jeremy occurred shortly after he began to see the mysterious figure.
You can always tell when a company is getting ready to fire someone. They start giving out written warnings for silly things, making sure to build a paper trail and make a case for a firing. Things that normally no one would care about suddenly become grave offenses, all worthy of being written and documented. I guess it works two ways, because it also encourages a person to quit rather than be scrutinized so heavily. I think Jeremy was too far gone to consider that option, though. The thing about it is that I don't think they were going to fire him because of anything he was doing wrong. They just knew he'd seen something. They needed to discredit him.
So we see, in order to cover up whatever was happening, the company decided to try to discredit and attempt to get rid of Jeremy.
I came in early that morning. No one else was there. At least that's what I thought. The supply room was lit. I didn't even notice Jeremy standing in the testing reception, but I don't think he knew I was there. Have you ever heard of a guillotine paper slicer? It sounds made up, but it's an actual piece of office equipment. I didn't even know we had one in the supply room. I guess they're more common at businesses that do a lot of graphic design work. I remember seeing one when I was still in school, and even then, I knew how dangerous it looked. I was always afraid of losing a finger. That seems so silly now. Jeremy used to do design work. I guess that's how he knew it was there.
So we discover that Tape Girl indeed knows about what happened with Jeremy and why there would be a lawsuit, as we find from the evidence that it appears to be implied that what Jeremy did was used a paper guillotine to remove his face, and that when she was first investigating, she discovered the blood, thinking it was ink because of the black lights in the room, and believed his severed face to be a Halloween mask.
The drawers have been emptied out. Someone was here. I don't think it was spring cleaning either. No. There was plastic on the floor. Someone was definitely here during the night. It had to have been the client. I mean, they sent us that stuff in the first place with no explanation, told us to scan it, said it would expedite the process so we wouldn't need to program any pathfinding ourselves. It was a budget thing, I guess. It was just junk. Circuit boards and things like that. Looked pretty old. Somehow, though, there was usable code on some of it. It seemed to take hold by itself. Things started changing. But then, he started appearing. At least that's what Jeremy said.
Tape Girl confirms to us that Fazbear Entertainment provided circuit boards for the game to be scanned in.
Using proprietary technology developed by Fazbear Entertainment, our VR development teams were able to use vintage control boards almost like plug and play, digitally recreating performances and personalities from the past in an instant.
However, potentially these were inflicted with remnant, which then corrupted the systems and allowed glitchtrap entry into the game. In order to cover up, the company would raid the game company's office during the night to recover their property.
I saw it for the first time today. There was a character I couldn't make out who it was, standing at the end of the hall. I thought it was just bugged out, so I made a note of it and kept playing. But then it was looking in the window, and not like Chica or Bonnie would. It was like it was actually looking in the window, seeing what I was doing. I was told I had 3 days to finish Jeremy's work, but I know it's just passing the time. They don't really expect me to do anything. It's just to keep up appearances until the buyout is complete. We have to look like we have things under control. There's another potential development studio that wants to pick up from here, but who knows what kind of lies they're being fed to convince them to do it. Against my better judgment, I'm going to do my best to see what's here, make notes of it, and try to isolate where this thing is hiding. At least then, the next person that tests this will have a chance of getting rid of it.
Upon discovering that the company intends to buy out the game and pass it on to another developer, Tape Girl would go on to try to find a way to destroy Glitchtrap in order to prevent it spreading to other unsuspecting developers.
Today was my last day of beta testing, and the anomaly that I've been seeing is nowhere to be found. But after inspecting some of the files, it seems that it's attached itself to these logs. My logs. That can't be an accident. So now I have to make a choice. Do I leave these logs here for you to find, or do I try to purge this thing myself by destroying the logs? I've chosen the latter. I can't delete them. By creating a protected area to store these logs apart from the game, I effectively gave this thing a safe place to hide itself. It's in here now. I may not be able to delete it, but I might be able to do something else now that it's attached itself. I have an idea. I ran a fragmentation program on the area of memory that was storing these logs for you. I effectively broke the files into pieces and broke the anomaly along with it. That means that you won't have my warnings to guide you, but hopefully it also means that this anomaly, this virus, or whatever it is, will remain broken and unable to do more damage.
So, upon realising that her efforts to categorise Glitchtrap had led to it basically using her logs as a safe place to save itself, she chose to try and ensure that it gets purged from the game, and to do so, she used a fragmentation program in order to split it up, allowing the warnings to remain for whoever was next using the game in order to discover it and destroy it.
Hello. You don't know me. I had created a series of logs for you documenting the troubled development of this VR game that you're now testing, in hopes that you, whoever you are, and whatever team you are with, will abandon development. Now I fear that those logs are being used as a Trojan horse. If you're unable to abandon development, hide all traces of these logs that I've created. I fear that finding them and reassembling them will also reassemble the very thing I've tried so desperately to destroy. There is a way to kill it. It wants to escape through someone. Someone plugged into this game. That's you now. You have to let it begin the process of leaving through you. Then use the disconnect switch that I've embedded by the main stage. Let it approach you. Let it begin to merge with you. Play the music and flip the switch. That will cause a hard restart of the game and flush the memory, effectively killing it. I hope. I don't know when it will come for you.
Now, interestingly enough, if we follow the instructions given to us by the Tape Girl, it does not in fact flush the game and kill Glitchtrap, but instead appears to allow him to possess us, which leads us to beg the question of whether or not Glitchtrap in fact actually succeeded in taking over the Tape Girl as well. As this appears to be the intended ending of the game given the lore going forward, then we can presume that the player character of the second beta tester team is in fact corrupted by Glitchtrap 2. Having ignored the various warnings throughout the game by the company insisting that they don't interact with anything to do with the tapes.
The Fazbear Virtual Experience is a robust title, but it almost never made it to market. The first development team had a lot of problems, made some sloppy mistakes, and was eventually pulled from the project. For that reason, we recommend that you avoid any comments, notes, or warnings that may have been left behind by previous development teams. We assure you that they are wholly untrustworthy. It seems that you may have inadvertently accessed an unauthorized portion of the game. Please be aware that interacting with unofficial game code can be harmful to you and potentially damaging to our reputation. As a reminder, please be sure to only interact with core gameplay elements and avoid anything that could potentially be considered a glitch, mistake, or embedded message from unauthorized personnel. It seems that, on multiple occasions now, you have disappeared from the authorized boundaries of the Fazbear Virtual Experience. We would ask that you not do it again.
The new beta tester would go on to unveil these hidden messages and in the process put the Glitchtrap character back together and allows it to corrupt their mind. The entity would appear as a plushie in its completed form in order to hide in the game. A later update would add an Easter egg which would reveal the Pizzaplex being built outside from the Pizza Party level, implying that the events of Security Breach indeed occur after those of Help Wanted in the timeline. We also get Easter eggs in the main hub of Helpy, who appears next to the hub screen and is in some way appears to be helping to point the character towards the button mentioned earlier to flush out Glitchtrap. And also during the Pizza Party game it is possible that a red-eyed shadowy bear can be seen which attacks the player in one of the corridors. The implications of this is unknown. There is also Game Over screen which points us to the fact that someone else may actually be trapped within the game, as the words "Where am I" are displayed on the TV screen that we see, which seems to indicate that someone is somehow in the game and does not actually know how they got there or where they are. And so that appears to be all the lore that can be gleaned from Help Wanted. As we continue to explore the franchise, we will look at the other games as well as the Fazbear Frights novel series and the mini games of Freddy in Space 2 and Fury's Rage, as they both, according to Security Breach, pertain to the lore of the series.